Hey, and now, Chapter 8, Students and Their Families. This one has got some good stuff, and it's interesting because it makes a lot of jumps of things that aren't necessary, and I'll be pointing those out. Let me show you what we're going to talk about in this. Stuff you know about, things like here, today's family, and you know how much they've changed and they're different. You grew up in this time. Things have changed a lot since my time, but these are things that you know about from this multiple point. And I'll spend some time on each of these and tell you what I want you to do. I'll look at these programs, these federal programs like this. A little bit on this. This one's a little bit harder. Child abuse, those things. They do a nice job on this. And this, they deny some realities here, but this one is pretty good. It gives you the awareness. And again, it's nothing off the charts here. This goes crazy, and I can't help but point some of this out again. Their insinuations here without proof are very interesting. They love this topic, so they're all over this and this. Okay, so I'll be hitting that pretty good. This is very interesting. For the most part, we don't live in this world of leaving school, so this is pretty interesting. And then the communications, how that's changed. So it's a pretty cool chapter, but I'll do some whining like usual on it once we get going here. Let me look at the book with you first. Students and their families. Here's the thing: diversity. Describe the diversity of students and families. Provide appropriate support to children during youth and school. For teenagers, confront these issues. What are the provisions of equality? And this is the one they love. It's about equality, and I don't know what to say. And they really get after it here. Probe and reason for some students to leave school, and then strategies to engage parents, especially the parents from underprivileged people. Okay, so let's give it a hit here. Today's families, and it's got an image here, and this isn't new. We have a couple across the street that we went to their wedding or commitment act or whatever you would call it. Just the neatest guys. In my mind, teaching this class, this is old news, and these authors bring it up like this is brand new, and they start with this: families have changed dramatically since the 50s. And I don't think we need to go there. I think we all know that. I don't think it matters to you. I don't think it matters to you what these families look like. You just know you're going to love, serve, protect, encourage, and teach the kids that come to your school, to your classroom, that you come in contact with. But these authors will spend a large period of time pointing out things about that and insinuating that that's not true. So they're going to spend a lot of time, and we're going to look at it with them. Okay? So the families have changed, obviously. Then they was a working father, a mother at home, and 2 children, but now they have this. Fathers stay at home. I was that for the most part. I was the one that was the primary caregiver to my kids when they were little, because my wife worked in a way different world than I did. So that wasn't new. Single parent families, I find that a little bit laughable to mention that anymore. That's a given. In a lot of places, that's the norm. I taught in a low-income school where that was the norm. And then families with 2 working parents, and that would probably be a closer description of my family, that when we first went to private school, that they were all geared up to serve families where mom was a stay-at-home mom, and I really had to work with them, encourage them that. Lots of this, and again, this, to me, it's laughable to mention these things. Childless marriages, so I'm not sure how that affects school if there's no children. And families with adopted children, gay, lesbian parents, extended families, it goes through the whole thing. Grandparents, and that's, again, if you teach in low-income school, this will be a little bit norm too, with the grandparents, maybe even great-grandparent is in charge. And then this is a norm now to unmarried people raising children. About teaching challenging times, we must learn to value, respect this. And again, that bothers me that they have to tell you that, because you know that you're not getting into this business. You're not choosing to become a teacher to pick which children and stuff, and you know that. So we're just going to move. Parents are generally older in the past because they marry later. Doesn't mean the children are older. A lot of I have relatives that had their family before they got married, and so you can't always tell by the age that people got married how old their kids are. Now I'm the other way. We were married for a long time before we had kids. We often are the age of the grandparents at a lot of the school events that we go to, and so we had some things to deal with in that way, being older. Okay. Population married, only 1 in 5 young people under the 30 years of age has been married. So that's an interesting stat. Most men and women work for a number of years before marrying. They do not always stay married to the same person. Again, are you sure you need to mention that here? With over half of the marriages ending in divorce. These children are being raised by single parents, parents who live separate households. And I would say we don't talk about this one enough, because we call it single parents if you're divorced and the child goes back and forth. But yeah, we're not married, but we're not single parents because we're raising the kids together. We have joint custody, so there'd be separate households, but we're single, a single parent, but interesting term there, but have joint custody, step parents, those. So 7 in 10 children under 18 live with 2 parents. Okay, so that's a number surprise you, but there's a caveat. 7 in 10 live with 2 parents, even though many of them are not their birth mother and father. Could be steps, or are steps several times. 1 in 4 U.S. lives with one of his or her parents. Most often, 83% of the time, it's with the mother. And that's almost higher than that in the low-income places. And then we got to go here right away. Nearly half of African-American children live in custodial families in which one parent does not live with his children. And it's interesting here, they're citing all these statistics. Like normal children who are caring, loving parents. And this is a term they throw around real loosely. And I'm not sure I don't understand this, but they use this term kind of loosely through here. So children with 2 caring and loving parents generally have economic advantages. However, children in all types of families have caring and loving parents who nurture them and support their academic success in school. It's not the type of family a disadvantage makes it difficult for them to adjust. Okay, so and I say in our neighbors, I would assume they will have children in the future, but they're wonderful folks, will be great parents, will be great community people, great at your school, and you might have a little bit of a shock factor at first, but I guarantee you'll enjoy working with them. And unlike these authors are insinuating, it's not that different. It's very similar. Their families, they want the same thing for their kids that you want for yours, and they don't. I think they omit that part of it here, but that's how crabby I can be about it. Teacher, you should monitor your interactions. And again, this is really hard for me because I don't understand how they're telling you that. They're the ones that need to monitor their interactions because you don't have a problem. Insinuating that you do, and that you have to monitor your interactions, I find offensive. Okay, labeling child as dysfunctional because he lives with a family structure different. Who does that? I never knew anybody that did that. Teachers develop self-fulfilling prophecies. You read this, but again, they cite it. With the diversity of today's families, teachers will need to be careful about assuming who is supporting students at home, maybe both custodial parents, grandparents, sibling. Think about the language. Okay, and this is, get this, think of this. You should think about the language you use. Parents suggest a mother and father when students' families might be foster family, grandparents, and another relative. It will be important to listen to the families here, to not judge them because of this. So here's what I see now. This is the politically correct way, and you want to go there. Parents is prejudiced. the word parents, even though that's a loose term we use, parents. But one of the things that I've seen regularly, and I've been referred to this a number of ways, and I'm going to take you here. Okay, this you had. Shifts, single parent, stay at home, other arrangements. I'm going to start with this. And I want you to put it right here, and this is number 1, and that is two-parent professional. And why I put that in there, because we go through all these things of different family structures, and the one that I've forgotten that's barely mentioned in this chapter is two-parent professional families. And my kids, this is going to sound horrible, and you can spit if you want, but went to a school, like their middle school was almost exclusively two-parent professional families. And why does that matter? Because you want to communicate and work with us differently than you do so many other structures that we're talking about. Yeah, you never hear this mentioned. And I'll talk a little bit more, but one, here's a big thing with two-parent professional families is don't send me notes. Email, text, make web pages, communicate that way electronically. We had a horrible time with this over the years, especially when they're in that small private school, of them sending notes home with kids that even if we saw it, which we did, but we couldn't find it back. We couldn't remember what it said. We need electronic digital things because I can access those at work or away from home, out of state, any place I can see and remember. And so that's your number 1 right there, is two-parent professional families. And then respect, value, diversity. I'm not sure what this means, value it. Again, to me it's trite. It's an insult to you and me. Nobody would ever think otherwise, but this is the biggest one, and this is the theme throughout the chapter. And they don't offer a lot of solutions, but this is the theme, and it's accurate. That the biggest challenge you'll have is with the economically challenged people. Your expectations, and again, I don't think you have to tell this, but what this is about is, here is, instead of parents, this is your number 2. And I want you to make this big and bold and nice and red, is a couple terms you want to get in your vocabulary. One is legal guardians, legal guardian, legal guardians. The other is caregiver. So you notate that with number 2 right here, those terms to refer to parents other than parents, because according to this, that is might not be correct, might be that. And the other thing I learned the hard way from this, working with the families from low-income school, is you don't ever assume. Don't assume people that come with the kids are a parent. Why? Because you could assume, and it could be a grandparent, it could be another relative, it could be mom's boyfriend, dad's girlfriend, neighbor. It could be somebody other than. So this is free advice, not part of the class. When you meet new people that you don't know for the first time in your school, you ask the child, you ask the student, now who's this? And let them say what term they are. Even without a doubt in your mind, it is a parent or parents. Ask the child to tell you, ask the student to tell you who they are. And a lot of times, of course, the parents will butt in and say, oh, I'm his mother or his grandma or whatever, but who is this? Because that'll take care of it if it's foster or something like that, or if there's 2 moms or 2 dads or whatever that is. My kids are good friends with another family that's exact same age as my 2 boys, and they have an aunt that was with 2 moms. She was a second mom. There was 2 moms. She had the children, but they had 2 kids, these 2 ladies. And again, wonderful, delightful people, but in your world, you don't want to assume anything. Okay. These families, parenting. Let me go back here if you would. Here's parenting. Want the best for their children. And this is what I'm saying. We don't have to go there based on what all these other things they're going to talk about. They and you want the best for their children, and you want the best for their children. But there's no guidebook. It's not easy. Here, parents and caretakers, and here's their term, are critical in setting the stage for future learning during those early years before children begin school. Okay, they're going to help you with a little parenting here. Reading, this is on the test. This one right here. Reading to young children and limiting the amount of time children spend watching TV has a strong relationship to reading scores. And here, I know this gets long, but I'm going to tell you why reading to kids when they're young and why this is a problem for kids that come from these generational poverty homes is reading to kids gives them vocabulary different than watching TV. Reading to kids gives them vocabulary. That's why we start reading them even in uterine. My kids drove me crazy when they were young. All the books we read at night, I had to limit it because, of course, they never wanted to stop. But it gives them vocabulary. Much easier to learn to read words that you've heard before than being bombarded by words that aren't part of the vocabulary in your family. That's what this is about. And we're not allowed to say that out loud. By age 4, children of professional parents have a much larger vocabulary than do other children. Again, they cite it, a study. Access to resources such as books, computers, and internet also contribute to that. And that's not a surprise. You're not surprised by that. Parents need to work together, okay, and they give you all that. So let me flip over here and say, parents are to set the stage, obviously. Here's this, improved literacy. Monitoring and learning have impact. Teachers and parental collaboration necessary. And again, that's, you know that. You're set for that. You're in this field. You get that. So now let's talk about this. Economic stress. And again, it's pointed here, but if you didn't come from this world, which many of us did not, there's some room here. And I've said to you this before, there may be children in your program, in your school, in your classroom that come from these types of worlds, but it's still going to be a different world than if you teach in a low-income school. And if I can, I'm going to say a low-income school means 70% or more of the children get free or reduced lunches, and they talk about that a little bit later here. So when I use that term, low-income school, it'll be documented that way. Okay, so what is this economic stress? Many families suffer this stress. May have lost their job. This is the number one thing. I think there's a question on the test. What's the number one thing that causes economic stress? And it's losing their job. And there's a whole bunch of other stuff here, but that's what leads to this. Homelessness, causes of homelessness, homeless children, homeless youth, almost always starts with lost your job, and that comes back to generational poverty. Okay, so that there's not a support system. I see that stress. You've seen that stress. Just recently, a man we know, a distant relative, that lost his job, and he's my age, and just threw their world upside down. Very well educated man, but they had resources. His wife worked. They had money saved. It was a blow, but he found another job, and on life went. Which I can't quite imagine that. But if you don't have those other resources, this dumps you. Teach more students are coming to school hungry. Okay, and there's a whole theory behind that. I explained that in one of the other lectures, and my kids would do that too if they didn't eat. But often there's food they choose not to eat because they don't have structure. They're tired when they get up. They're not ready to eat, and of course they're hungry when they get there, and really hard for them to learn, just like it is you and I, if we're hungry. And here's a good one. 7 in 10 parents and 65% of students worry about their families having enough money to cover basic needs. And again, they have research. This MetLife, they're going to quote that a bunch through here. And let me just show you where that is on here. I got that here, that thing. And it's just research. I'm going to open this because I'm going to come back here a couple times, but they do a nice job here, and this is a pretty thorough thing that they had. It's the MetLife American Teacher thing. Let me see here. It gives you this when they did put this together, 2012, so it's a little bit older. In-depth phone interviews. They dedicated surveys, interviews. They talked to project directors. That here's their message. I'm going to show you who they hooked up with. Here's who they all talked to. All these things. Tells you how they did it. They surveyed 1,000 teachers and 500 principals, and they talked to a bunch of other people, leaders in education, on the phone. So that's what all of these are based on. The authors will keep quoting that study, MetLife 212. So now you know what it is. It's a study. Okay. Almost 2 in 3 teachers report the number of students and families needing health and social support has increased, but many school districts have reduced or eliminated those services along with after-school programs as part of the budget cutting. And again, what they don't tell you is why are they cutting budgets? An economic downturn, less money came in the means they normally do. These after-school programs aren't mandated, and so that's what they did. And a lot of these programs were taken over by somebody else. How limited family incomes affect families. This first, homelessness. With low incomes, temporarily lose their ability to pay their rent, maintain mortgages, and often they're evicted, and that's very real. And whether it's an apartment or a house or what have you, and so they're on the streets of small or large cities, as well as the rural areas. That as many as 3.5 million people, they say, sleep in shelters. Sometimes that's pretty well documented. Transitional housing, public places not meant for human, and sometimes like this, and this is off of my world, but I worked with homeless people when I ran the jobs program way back at another life, and one of the things I quickly learned is people that lived in streets, lived outside, lived under bridges, chose to, and the reason they chose to was of mental illness. Most folks that don't have a home find places to live, like these transitional houses and shelters and stuff like that. I spent a day one time with a homeless man in Anchorage, Alaska, and he educated me on that. And he said the reason people don't like to go to those shelters a lot of times because there's so many mentally disabled, or I should say mentally ill people in those homes that it makes it really not very fun to live in. And so he only went there when it got really cold. If he could stand it outside, he had a little place carved out for himself. And he was very articulate. He didn't graduate college, but he had some college. Unbelievable man, but he was a, heroin addict in his life and lost everything several times. And so that was his take. Many more families just are paycheck to paycheck, illness or emergency, things like that, tip them over. Family, youth, children, okay. And so who is homeless here? Characteristic of hope. And this is all percentage of who is homeless. And this is your first clip. And again, I want to say to you, homeless means different things, because sometimes it means living in your car, and sometimes it means living in a shelter. So here is your first clip. But I want to point some things out here is, first of all, this is total. So here, 60% of the homeless people are male, which means, of course, female is only 40%. So these have to add up. These percentages have to add up to be 100. This one is individuals, meaning not without family, is up here. Unaccompanied youth. That's kind of hard to imagine, isn't it? That happens. A percent of homeless are Native American Indians, which is interesting. It's probably higher here in this area. African American is 40%. Employed. This is interesting. That even if they have jobs, they're underpaid or under-earned what they should. Victims of domestic. This is a big one. These victims of domestic violence. Disabilities. And my experience, again, this is going to hurt a little bit, but often the ones that I saw also had some mental illness issues here. And then severe mental illness, which crosses across all these here. Under the age of 18, there's some for that. This is not supposed to be white Almost 50% of homeless people are white, and that kind of flies against the whole narrative that this chapter is about. But they do have that, so you get this one. There you go. And then what are the causes? And number one, I think on the test, actually, number one thing is unemployment. And they list them here for you. Lack of affordable housing, poverty, low wages, things like that. Let me take you back over here. Continue to suffer economic stress, coming to school hungry. And here's the thing about that. Almost all of our schools now serve free breakfast to those that get free and reduced lunches. So take advantage of that, encourage them. And why wouldn't they? Well, so a lot of times they're running late, so they miss breakfast. And I can remember hearing that. I didn't get here in time for breakfast. Say, for example, I think in our school where my son goes, the school starts at 8:10, I believe, and breakfast is served 7:30 till 8. And 8 o'clock, they shut it off. And so that may be obvious to you, but one of the things, families that are economically stressed, that happens. They're not organized. They have enough challenge in their life that they don't get there in time. Worry about their having enough money to cover basic needs, and that's a big number. Have reduced or eliminated many health and support services. And a question you could ask is, was that their job to provide that to begin with? And if you're in charge of your school in that respect, here's what you do. Get connected with the agencies in the community that provide this. You can throw up your hands like these authors insinuate, but you'll be much more efficient at working with these families. So here's the causes. I say here's the number one cause, but obviously this affordable housing, and they really hit this through here. And I'm not sure what that term means. That's kind of like the loving and caring. What is affordable? So many housing projects today are based on income, that you pay a percentage of your income. But this is a big one, and the government has subsidized many housing units. The problem is that we go back to these stresses. Often they're not functional enough to access that and take care of it. What I saw more than once is they get evicted for whatever reason, and now we can say it's lack of housing, but even if they're working, they get evicted. And then obviously in poverty and low wages, kind of thing. And going to be, so we're going to let that rest right there. So we have that. We looked at the causes. Homeless families compose over 1/3 of the homeless population, disproportionately headed by young women. Obviously have limited education or have high rates of domestic violence and mental illness. And again, that's not a surprise. Their image kind of shows that. This is the narrative they want to display. But yeah, that's what it looks like. And you're asking how do they get there? It comes back from this generational thing of models. There's no support system in place. When this would happen in your family, often there's a family support network that helps with this, and they cite this really well here. Their children suffering from the chronic health problems, asthma, gastro problems, and obviously, I mean, again, that's without saying, if you don't have these other parts of your life fixed, next thing, these kinds of things start to happen. Devastating to families who are sometimes separated from partners and their children. That's a term that you want to get familiar with, is how we'll refer to caregivers and guardians as partners. Don't assume husband or wife, partners. Okay, the children when they are placed in foster care, left. So that's what happens a lot of times too. They go into foster care system, left with relatives. This. So that's that. Homeless children, 2.5 million, or 1 in 30 are homeless at some time during a year. Very interesting because my world is very sheltered. I don't know any kids that I don't know this 1 out of 30. I've never seen that other than at the low-income school. And even there, they always seem to find the shelter. I had more than once, many a time, kid come say, hey, we're living in the shelter, and life went on. But Staying in shelters, night, yeah, like that. They're very good. On the streets, or inadequate health care, just inadequate everything. I mean, it's not a good situation. You know that. Disease, this, okay. And homeless youth, it kind of gets that unaccompanied young people. That's that group we talked about. At least from foster, the release from foster care and some other institution settings have run away from home. And again, that not often is that in the middle income families. It's from the generational poverty families. And I went to court many times as a school representative because of what we call a CHIN, child in need of supervision, and they had to go to court because they would be picked up like that, and so they'd be on the streets for several times, and they get picked up. So let's take homeless in school. Take a look at this. First of all, they all the kids can be in school. Rarely, this is the group that's the highest absenteeism. So know that ahead of time. They have the highest absenteeism rate of any. Not fare as well as their classmates in life and in schools. More likely than their classmates to experience traumas, domestic, and this. Well, just being homeless is trauma in itself. So here, I'm going to put this in here. Here's what it is. This, I think we're only up to number 3. As always, resilient. From here, coming things. And number 4, moving from one home to another frequently occurs in low-income families. Such resistance and instability can temporarily lead to homelessness. Low-income are more often not as affluent. Regularly, this lack of clothing. Although the McKinney-Ventral Homeless Act passed in same limited residence requirements, so I'm going to have you look this up and give a definition of that. So that'll be number 4. Number 4 is this McKinney-Vento Homeless Act. Resident requirements, students, homeless children. Because a long time, okay, say the shelters in your district, this child comes to school, wants to go to your school, so no, you're not part of our district. Well, in '87 they passed this thing that said that you could. And it really opened the door for people also that aren't from here, that aren't legal in this country, to attend your school also. And we get into that a little bit later. Talk about transportation and all that goes with it. Focus on students' classroom success, high quality homeless children. But if you work with this group, you're a saint. Okay. All right. So now let's talk about these federal programs for low-income families. Again, it goes back to President Johnson saving folks by coming up with this war on poverty and created all these programs. The country was wounded from the assassination of a president, and so lots of this came. And full disclosure, I am a child of free lunch. And I was one of the first families at the birth of this to take advantage of this. As you know, I'm one of 11 children. And this was in the 70s. And our school got it, and we got to have free lunch. So that's us. All levels of education systems are more likely than white and Asian students. And this is an interesting thing, too, that these folks, let me just read this to you again. The programs are available for low-income students of all levels of educational systems. African-American, Hispanic, and American Indian students are more likely than white and Asian students to attend high-poverty schools, and nearly all are eligible for free lunch. Urban areas have twice as many as suburban. Urban, as you know, the inner city has twice the high poverty level. Section summarizes some of the programs. So this will be your number 5. Free reduced lunch here. 185% of the federal poverty level. So what did I just say? We're at number 5 here. Number 5 will be, first of all, what is federal level? It's different than state. We had already where you reported what the state poverty rate level was, and now the feds have a different number. So you are going to tell me what 185% of that is. That'll be number 6. 185% of that federal guideline. So that'll tell you how much a family can make and still qualify for free or reduced lunches. Okay? So free reduced lunch programs, President Johnson, Title I. You've all heard of this. None of you have never heard of this term. A Title I is the cornerstone of programs of students in low-income families. It has been part of the Elementary and Secondary Ed Act since '65, President Johnson. Most recently, as part of the Every Student Succeeds in '15 was renewed. Assistance is provided to public schools. Okay, the assistance is provided to public schools with large numbers of students whose families meet those federal poverty, not state, federal poverty levels, are close to the poverty level to help these students meet state academic standards. The school district must also provide services to eligible private schools. I wonder how long that'll last. So here's this. Current Title I provisions require the involvement of parents as advisor to the school leaders. Okay, so here's another program that's in low-income schools that we don't talk about. It's been around since '65. And when the president introduced this at that time, this would eliminate, his sell was, it would eliminate low-income schools because of this program. And they exist today. Most of our small rural schools are Title I schools. Half the elementary schools in Sioux Falls are Title I schools. And so you got this. So this will be number 7, and I'm going to make this number 8, even though I'm not done with number 7. Okay, so here's your definition. Serves more than 21 million students. Of all students who receive Title I, 3% are enrolled in preschool, over 3 in 5 in kindergarten through 5th. 1 in 5 in 6 and 8, and nearly 1 in 5 in things. So even it could be the high school, it goes down. But the biggest share, 3 and 5, which is, you got it, 60% of kids that are in kindergarten through 5th grade. And again, they cite it. They got where they get their information. Okay, here this last one. In the largest school districts, more than half of the students attend schools eligible for Title I funds. Why the large? Because the large schools are often the urban. What does urban school mean? That's the inner city next to the low-income housing. Then we have Head Start, and here's your definition of Head Start. Funded program designed to serve 3 to 5-year-old children from low-income families. And so you qualify for this program by income guidelines. It's a whole child. Head Start teaches you how to work, social work, nurses, health professionals directly, and the parents. So they work with the families. They work with the caregivers and the legal guardians and partners, as well as with the child. Teachers and social workers make periodic home visits. Did you know that? If you're involved in Head Start, they make home visits to, okay, they shouldn't assume parents here, okay, and provide them with parenting and teaching skills to use to work their children. Start to receive breakfast and lunch daily at school, 2. So if you get your child in here, they get 2 meals, just like they do in public school. Free. Along with working academic skills, Head Start also teaches social skills, often an absent for these kids. Social skills, play skills, healthy habits, table manners. So they parent. They will help with parenting. Head Start was expanded in '95 to include early childhood programs that serve the needs of 2-year-olds and their families. So '95, 2-year-olds was another huge group in here. Okay. And let's see, yep, and that's what Head Start. Can I just do this, take a quick caveat? I'm going to say Head Start South Dakota. Okay. And here it is, Head Start, and it has lots of good information here. One of the things that you're going to be surprised at is the programs, the number of programs in South Dakota. It comes up like this. Here's the South Dakota homepage of this. And first of all, like here you see programs, and so the programs, here they are, and this is all the programs are in South Dakota. I thought there was a lot more, and where they're at and how they're spread out and stuff. So there's that. How about this? If you want a job, there's jobs open right now in Head Start, and it has some listings here if you want to apply for a job. But that's it. But here's what you get to do. As we come back to the book here, let's look at this on Head Start. You already have what you're going to put a little definition of what it is, but number 9, you are going to look up income guidelines. So on the South Dakota one, you simply say Head Start South Dakota income guidelines, and you're going to find it's not simple. It's complicated, and you don't have to do it all. You put a link. Do you remember how I showed you how to make a link? Let me see here. If it was here, and I would say it's like this. If I wanted to make a link here, and you're going to link it right to Head Start, and your sheet will look like this. You block it, we call it, and then you insert, and you put a hyperlink, and you drop your URL right there. Let me go grab the one I had here. Here's my URL. And so I insert this hyperlink. I drop that there, and it's linked. So I will see that link. And you don't lay the URL there. It's linked right to Head Start there. And that will be, I'm going to go ahead and save that. That will be this. Okay. Good job. Income guidelines. They're very complicated. Lots of squishy stuff in it. Okay, so that is that. And then it talks more about this free reduced lunch. False insecurity there. Not sure what a meal, large, nutritious. It doesn't talk about here the 185% or less of federal poverty level. And again, they cite that. Most schools serve free or reduced lunches. Also serve breakfast. And I think almost it's a rule now. So any school serve breakfast. And I predict in a very short time you'll also have an after-school snack. A lot of them do because they stay in the after-school programs. So you really can get 3 squares a day there. And a lot of schools now offer the backpack program. So really, your child could get all their meals through the school free. And that's how that was. I don't think that was a president's intent when he created this, but these breakfasts provide more fruits and milk, and most of these students would normally consume. In addition, breakfast contributes to greater attention in class, improved academic achievement, fewer discipline problems, and none of that's new. You know all that. Throughout the summer, yes, they all have summer programs. In Sioux Falls, as of a few years ago, there's no requirements. You can walk up to any of the providing schools at any time, age birth through 18, and get free lunch. And so that I'm not sure who pays for it, but free or local summer education enrichment. Our children are free or reduced lunch. Nearly half of all elementary and secondary students are eligible for reduced lunch prices. Really interesting, isn't it, in this country that half get free reduced? That just blows me away. And again, they cite it here. Larger proportion of students in these districts are eligible for free reduced lunches, and almost schools being eligible. Okay, and then this is about after school. Children left alone. Most single parents work outside the home. Many of two are parent homes. Both parents work. And we went through that. You probably went through that. We had the same thing. Parents worry about the safety. Parents or relatives provide, this on the tests. Parents or relatives still provide over 50% of the supervision. But the remaining 50 are in the care of outside, mostly at school. And I don't, this is, I'm not sure, accidents. You worry about them making bad decisions, but most likely to strength drugs due to the thing was that by the time my kids were thinking about that, they were in sports every night after school. But lots and lots. This is very well documented of the hours between 3 and 5 or 3 and 6 is when this happens, and this is when you get new babies too. Is a lot of that happens of unsupervised adolescence after school. And educators should be sensitive to these realities. And our deal is like any is what age are they old enough to be home by themselves? And we had a series of steps to get to that. And here it shows who provides that care arrangements. More accidents, injuries. Okay, so we got that. Let's move on. Dangers. Dangers. Okay, let's look at the dangers here. And this, let me look where we're at. This is number 10. And you're going to have some for each of these. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Don't do anything. Let me talk about them. Then you come back and make notes for each of those and turn those nice notes red like you've done so well. First of all, neglect is this. And it's the most common and hardest to deal with of abuse because it's kind of squishy. Face the parents' voices, they even spank them on occasion. However, some family members seriously hurt children. Estimated 3.9 referrals of child abuse and protective services in 2014. That's a very interesting number. Okay, 3 in 4 victims suffer neglect. So 3 out of 4 of these are neglect. And this neglect, just providing these basic housing, food, education, and medical care. And I dealt with this. You don't know what to do with kids that are dirty. My thing was kids coming to school, middle school kids, which is a really interesting time, that hadn't bathed in long periods of time and had very dirty clothes. What do you do with that? So there. And again, they cite all this as many of us, 1 in 4 children, some type of abuse for their 18. Again, that just seems astounding to me that 1 in 4 under the age of 6, boys more likely to be victims of child abuse, but girls age 6 or more are more likely to be victims. Okay, youngest children more vulnerable. More children a year old suffering abuse. High school girls 10.5 are twice as likely as boys to be sexually abused. Sensational news stories arose sexual abuse of children. Okay, and then talks about here's the types. Here's these different ones, and then a child abuse by age. Okay, isn't this sad? The youngest ones. Okay, and let's look at that. So sexual harassment in schools. I think I have that one. Yeah, let's see what that's about. 1 in 5 LGBT students report this. Most common harassment experience is verbal. Very interesting. Which includes unwanted comments, jokes, gestures. Really a fine line between jokes and that. Really hard. Yeah. Victims of sexual harassment do not appear to be based on race, that thing, or social economic caste. Income students report being touched in unwelcome ways. Harassment more likely to be male students, a group of male. By cyber harassment than in person, and that's the new thing. Why would I can harass you from a distance? 1 in 5 receiving unwelcome comments and photos and texts. Why do students sexually harass others? Harass actions to hurt their victims. So what is this? A biennial study of school climate found that academic success is negatively affected when students feel unsafe or uncomfortable at school. And it goes back to the LGBTQ students are more likely than other students to skip a class or miss school. And again, they cite that. And then here, the impact of harassment on students, all these things they do. And the number one thing is they don't go to school. Okay? They don't go to school, and they feel sick to their stomach, stay at home, so all those deals. About half of the harassed students in the American Association of University Women ignored the harassment. I think there was a test on the question on the test about that. They ignored it. And again, they cite it. They're more likely than boys to tell harassers to stop and try defend themselves. Boys are more likely to turn it into a joke. Few students report sexual harassment to school officials, which can be a headache, and most of it because we know now, and I think there's less of this, but I think kids are more likely to advocate for themselves. Okay, here's bullying in school, cyberbullying, you get all that. And this is you. If you have ignored this, if you had knowledge of this, and something happens, you're in trouble. So you want to teach about it. If you see things that you even think is it. And what's really hard, here's where bullying's hard, and they don't help you with this, but here's what's hard. Kid says, he did something. He says, no, I didn't. Hearsay. She's just saying that to get me in trouble. Now you get to sort that out. Good luck with that. Then suicide. This is the icky one. Suicide is the third leading cause of adolescent death, behind automobile accidents and unintentional injuries. 17% of high schools seriously consider. Again, that seems a crazy number to me, but maybe. 14% made a plan, 8% actually attempted, 3% and require medical attention. Hispanic youth are more likely than their peers to attempt suicide. I think you better know that too. I think there's a question on the test about that too. Male adolescents are more likely to commit suicide. Females are more likely to think about it. Gay teens are at particular risk, being 2 to 3 times more likely to attempt than their peers. Suicide attempts are often called for help. So you get that one. Again, they document all that really well. So here's the challenges of the teen years. Let's flip back here and say here's the challenges. Obviously this, sex with freedom and sophistication of adulthood, teenage sex activity has decreased while responsibility has increased. Poverty appears, and it doesn't appear, it is the most important factor in determining teenage mothers. So let's go look at that, and then I've got that one for you. Drug using, sexually promiscuous. Young people might not always agree with the adults with whom they interact, and sometimes they even break the rules, but most finish high school and attend post-secondary. Today's teens are more like their counterparts in the past generations, even though what we see. Young people face numerous challenges and mature to adulthood, increased pressure to grow up quickly, all those things that are the same, trying to figure out who they are. But adults usually regard teenagers as too young to deserve the benefits of adulthood. And we did that raising kids, and so do other people. I think that's on the test. You better get that one. They expect teenagers to enjoy youth, begin dating, figure all those things out themselves. Here again, we go back to this. Many teenagers, especially urban, report the message that they receive about themselves in the media. Schools usually negative. Feel adults who communicate do not care about them. That'd be terrible if you said about your school. But cuts and funding in school, and that's always, these authors say this is what makes it bad, even though they have the Head Start programs for schools, parks, communities. Okay, respect from adults is critical in helping youth develop self-esteem. This is you. This is how you make a difference. Adult supervision. Okay, so back to this. And this is number 11. They don't talk about this. I'm going to say why. Number 11 is why. Why is that the most important factor? Why disproportionately do the folks that come from these low-income communities have teenage pregnancy and sexually transmitted disease at a higher rate than the ones from the suburbs and higher than the rural And substance abuse. Well, large percentage of teens try drugs. Alcohol is the most common. I think there's a question on the test about that. Still the most common is alcohol. Lots of marijuana out there, lots of other things, but alcohol is still the drug of choice. 2 out of 3 high school students have experienced alcohol, and 2 in 5 tried marijuana. So again, they have this. I'm sure it's documented. Chemical dependency. We're going to put that one in here. Right here. This will be number 12. Chem dependency. And that is from right there. Okay, and they documented here where they got their stuff from the study. And here, this is interesting. Okay, and it goes by here, like how this has went down. Okay, and that's interesting. And I'm going to give you that one. We're going to clip that. And this is simply in the past month. Okay, so let's look at the most recent one. Is 15 cigarettes, smokeless, and this is percentage of the kids. I'm assuming students 8, 12 using this. Yeah, smokeless alcohol. It seems high. Marijuana. This is going, but it's still, as you can see, alcohol is still by far the most. And then the other drugs. Okay, so that is 8.6. You get that one to put in your notes right there. Okay. And we call that number 13. Goes right there. So economic realities. Young people may be worried about somewhat pessimistic about their future. However, they seek out post-secondary education and help. 66% high school graduates go to college immediately after this. So let's put that in there. See what we have here. It goes right here. And this would be number 14 right here. You put it in that blank. That number, 66% after high school, and African Americans, 57, Hispanics 66, whites 67, Asians 81. And again, I asked you this before. This will be your number 15. Why Asians high? Nobody can explain that because they represent all these other underprivileged that we talk about, and yet they blow these doors off on the tests. And here they have a much higher rate of going, even though they represent the same new people to this country. So that's the Asians. You get that one. Okay. Difference exists immediate enrollment of college and family economic status, and that's quite obvious. The thing is that you don't really talk about here is often they don't aspire. These low-income kids, school wasn't real fun, and they don't aspire to go to college. And if they do, and if you know folks that are representative here, there's programs that address that. Many things we look at for my kids for college type scholarships were based on this. Many of these. So if you met these income guidelines, you got some of this. So this is a little bit misleading because often they don't aspire to this. 80% of income from these high income go right to college. Females make up 59% of students enrolled in college. So I'm surprised there's no screaming about that. So if there's 59, that means 41% in the college campus across this country. Like 60% are women, 40% are men. Sorry, you're going to think I'm a sexist, but where's the outcry over that? Why isn't there headlines over that? That we're down to 40%. I mean, it would be, you'd expect 51, 49, some imbalance, but that's huge. That's a huge discrepancy, and they cite it. Employment teenagers were affected negatively in 07 with recession. Jobs and schools, summer disappeared. Goes through over half of young people between ages of 16 24 had summer jobs in 15. Over half did. That seemed low to me. But only 30% of youth 16 and 19 were working. That just seems low. Really? I mean, that's all I did. I was on the farm, but everybody I knew worked in the summer. So that seems like a really known number. And of course, the other thing it begs to is what did the others do? So let's talk about after-school jobs. I'm going to give you this now. Come back to our website, and I ask you, what about high school work? You click on this. And it's supposed to load. Hopefully it loads faster than you. But it looks like this. It says, what is the term you're in? So that you're in, say, for example, fall 17 now, and you can choose whatever it is. And did you work? And yes, I did. And I worked 40 hours on farm. And you can put whatever you want here, but I just want you to respond. And I want to say I'm a university person, university center. And then submit. And I got it. And then you can see the responses. Takes a little while, but you can see what other people put. Looks like this. All right, so that you get that, and I'm going to put that in there for you. And let me go back to here, and let's see. That will be after school. This will be number 16. Did you work? There. And all kinds of benefits of working after school, as you know. And let's move on. Equity in schools. And this one's a little bit hard. And will you just look at the first one? This is the one I'm just shocked. Okay, I've been showing you all the way through here about how things are documented. So here, this opening statement in equity in schools, and I'm just going to read it to you. A democratic society is built by principles of social equality and respect of individuals within the society. However, many persons of color, limited English speakers, women, persons with disabilities, people with low incomes, people affiliated with religions other than Christianity, and LGBTQs do not experience the equity, the equality that other members of society enjoy. Okay, who is left out of this thing then? Who's left out of here? So everybody does except these groups: people of color, limited English speakers, women, persons with disabilities, people low incomes, people affiliated with religions other than Christianity. LGBTQs do not experience equality. Who's left? Me. The white Christian men. That's what this is about. Every other group is affected except white Christian men. Where is the documentation for that? Where does he cite that, where that came from? Why doesn't he say here, my opinion, our opinion is this? They state it as if it's facts, no documentation. Say, Fegan, you are the only one that has equality of life here. Everybody else, say, white Christian men. I'm offended by that. Does that mean they take it out? That offends me. Power relationships among groups influence young people's perception of themselves. It kind of goes in that. Power allows access to social benefits, such as school housing, and they're all over this here. Power relationships exist. Parents often feel powerless in the education of their children, and I get that, and I saw that firsthand, where parents were intimidated, scared, overwhelmed, and often the families I worked with at the low-income school had such a horrible experience when they were in school that all they want is this to go away. And their thing is power allows access to social benefits such as good housing, tax deductions, best schools, social services, all those things by power. And so you're going to want to read about that. And then they get this, they love this one, this otherness, prejudice, socialization. I'll let you look at those. And they've got those in there for you. This one is the most interesting to me. The socialization is the process of learning social norms of one's culture. And I'll show you what it says here. Prejudice attitudes can be transformed into discriminatory behaviors that prevent students from joining a club or something like this. You can take a number of steps to keep your own prejudice from hurting themselves. Very interesting that kind of attack on someone. Space curious interactions with students. The impact of discrimination gets over here. Prevents members from group participating. Racism involves assumption of a racial superiority. Potential concerns about how children will be treated. Families who distrust educators. It's incongruent with schools' perception. And that's Ruby Payne's work there. And then, again, what are we on here? We are on 17. You get to do these. 1, 2, 3. And they got them here for you. Okay. Yeah, zero tolerance policies affect kids, and I agree with this, are beginning to abandon school districts to allow educators to make professional judgments based on circumstance of the incident. In addition, educators are looking at a number of options to reduce incidents of schools that lead to out-of-school suspensions, because what happens, these kids from low-income neighborhoods were suspended at a higher rate, and of course a lot of schools have policies of who gets suspended, and it's zero tolerance for drugs, alcohol, fighting, weapons, things like that. All the things that you and I would consider to keep our schools safe, they have to take retake a look at. These changes are expected to reduce dramatically the number of African American Hispanic students who are disproportionately suspended or expelled. So here's your discussion: should out-of-school student suspensions be limited? And you, for the most part, do not know this world. And so you get to weigh in on something that you're very unfamiliar with. I'm guessing most of you have never been suspended from school. And so you don't know about that world. All right. Get that, and then this is interesting. If we do not experience discrimination in our everyday experiences, we may have a difficult time acknowledging that it exists. Many white students do not see themselves as advantaged or privileged society. So, again, I'm not sure how that fits, but this is the narrative. They do not think they receive any more benefits in society than does anyone else. These students may have a difficult time fighting social injustices because they have neither experimented nor admitted to their existence. So they hit this pretty hard in racism, and then they go through this. And this is very interesting. Okay, can I just give you this? This one scares me a little. Assumption of superiority is at the center of racism. Let me jump down here. Groups like Black Lives Matter are forcing all of us to face the racism that exists in not only our police departments, but also in our schools and everyday lives. Scary stuff. That group has really hurt some people and done some crazy things, and very interesting that they're praised here as doing this. But a lot of people accept that. So they're in here, and interesting. Okay. Family, the history of discrimination in society and schools may worry about their children being treated. These parents may distrust educators, unable to acknowledge the role of racism played in their lives. Yeah, they may accuse teachers of the school of being racist, and that I had that more than once, more than 5 times, more than 10 times. That seemed like whenever there was a disagreement with a child from another race, this is where it went. So I found that interesting, and so you get that now. Engagement in school. Again, let's look at this. This goes with leaving school early, like dropout factories. I have that here for you. That will be number 18. But who's leaving school early? 4 and 5 students who enter the 9th grade graduate with a regular diploma by the end of the 12th grade. 4 and 5. So that's about 80%. Dropping out of school is particularly critical in large urban segregated schools. And why are they segregated? Why are they large? Why are they urban? Goes back to the income thing. Low income housing. Nobody says it. I'm saying it. That's how they congregate. That's how folks that are economically stressed congregate into these urban segregated schools, is because there's low income housing in the areas, in those neighborhoods. Some areas have less than 60% of high school students graduate in 4 years, and they begin the 9th grade. Okay. High school graduations are improving, even in these schools, thank goodness. Students from low-income families drop out of high school at a higher rate than students from middle income. And again, not profound. You knew this. In fact, you look at some of our reservation schools and stuff, it's a crazy number. And I'm going to give you this one also. This will be your third and final clip. And here again, look at these guys. Higher rate of 4 years. Now this is not supposed to be, this is supposed to be higher. Okay. This is probably the surprise one. Here's your clip. 8-7. And it goes right here. Number 19, 8.7. Resiliency. Oh. Let me see here. This all stats here, all documented. Again, that's what's so weird here, that the back one about the other thing is 9th grade's critical. Oh, what's this up here? Okay. More education does not make a difference. 71% of college graduates are working and earning nearly double high school and some graduates does. So it does. Their point here is of the silver bullet being education. Not only graduate in high school, but college, because 71% of people that do graduate college make nearly double what a high school graduate does. Have you ever heard that before? Interesting. Okay. The 9th grade is a critical period to decide if they should leave school, middle school, and beginning of high school. And a big thing there, of course, is a big change from a big middle school to these large urban schools. Okay. Then resiliency, self-efficacy. I'm going to give you that. Also, this will be number 20. Self-efficacy. That goes right there. Okay. So there's what resiliency is. Higher family SES contributed positive resiliency, but it's not required. SES, social economic status, to get free lunch and breakfast and snack at the end of the day. Then this access technology, and I think this is a huge deal, but getting to be less. 3 in 4 households have internet access, but there's so much available around now in our public areas, schools, libraries, coffee shops, that a lot more people have access. And can I just give this plug in? We're just about done, but one of the things that happens to my kids is, it's less now, but when they were younger, this mantra of we don't assign things using the computer because not everybody has the internet at home. And you can all agree with that. Go ahead and shake your head. But the thing that was hard about that was, to me, we went to the lowest common denominator, that we're not going to do meaningful, connected instructional things because not everybody has it. So if not everybody has it, nobody gets it. And I just kind of stand there thinking, and yet I heard this a dozen times from different teachers. Oh, we don't do that because not everybody has internet at home. So, therefore, nobody can do it. You can figure it out if they don't have internet. Okay, this is about parent involvement. Here's your technology. Teacher critical development of good communication with parents. More productive, engaged in parent school. Here the email, short letters, those things, internet services, all kinds of things to do that. And this thing of, the more parents are involved, the better the kids do. But that's not always true, because it's like this. The more parents are involved, the better the kids do. But what's the cause and effect? Are parents involved because the kids are doing well? The kids doing well, the parents are involved. It's like this interpretation. Diet Coke must be fattening because fat people drink it. Well, here, involved parents, the reason they're involved is because the kids are doing well. That I can remember a parent told me one time, I don't want to come to conference. I hear the same stuff every year. It's never good. I don't want to hear it. And I see her once a year, and that was at the IEP meeting. So, parent involvement, there you go. Communicating with families, it talks about that. Engaging families, participating in community events. And this is a great piece here on how you can get, so you know your community and the kids in your community. Some school districts encourage home visits. Don't do that unless you have somebody to go with you. Home visits could be used in strengthening struggling families. I'm telling you, you don't connect with a family until you visit their home. And I made lots of those for different reasons. Teachers also have expectation how parents should assist them in improving their children's learning. Teachers hold parents responsible for ensuring that the children are sufficiently rest and nutritious meals. And I'm saying to you, that's not true. Because we serve them all their meals at school, so we're not holding them responsible for meals. Rest is a huge deal, and here's what happens to rest. You don't get to know this, but rest comes from structured bedtime, structured nights. And a lot of our families aren't strong enough to structure that, so the kids by a very young age get to come and go, sleep when they want, and be up when they want. And that's how you get tired, unfed kids. If they were up screwing around all night, now they're tired when it's time to go, they don't feel like eating, and you're not allowed to talk about that. And again, it's back to life. They found these things, and I gave you this right here. Oh, we have it right here. 6 types of parent involvement. You bring that from right here. Okay. This is interesting. Parents are more engaged in schools than the MetLife. 87% of parents report they have attended a general school or PTO meeting, and 76% attend parent conferences. That's awesome. That's a great number. When I was in the middle school, we never saw 76% of the parents. That's awesome. Over 2 in 5 parents, which is 40%, have volunteered or served on school committees. Nearly half of the students survey reported that their parents visit school at least once a month. That's awesome. That's a great number. Overall, 4 in 5 parents rate their child's teacher as successful engaging them. And I think that's a question on the test. 80% say their kid's teacher engages them. Parents of high school low-income parents in this rate their teachers as highly. Okay, and teachers appear to be more satisfied with their jobs when parents are engaged in school, and you would get that too. So, I better number this for you. Here's all your things about working with families. We are on number 21. This is number 21. Chapter 8, Families.